deep in the frozen taiga of Siberia, near the remote pumping station along the eastern Siberia-Pacific Ocean ESPO pipeline in Irkutsk Oblast. Massive pumps hummed relentlessly, pushing hundreds of thousands of barrels of crude oil eastward toward China's borders and Pacific ports. This vital artery, stretching over 4,800 kilometers from Taishet to Kozmino, was Russia's lifeline for evading Western sanctions, funneling oil to Asia and generating billions in revenue to fuel its war machine. Suddenly, at 3:47 a.m. local time, radar screens at a nearby Voronezh DM early warning station lit up with dozens of unidentified signals. Low-flying, stealthy intruders racing through the night sky from the southwest. These weren't stray aircraft, they were a swarm, carrying a combined payload of over 2 tons of high explosives, aimed at a segment of the pipeline valued at an estimated $250 million in infrastructure alone. The seeds of this audacious operation were sown months earlier in secretive bunkers outside Kyiv, where Ukrainian intelligence analysts pored over satellite imagery and intercepted communications. The ESPO pipeline, operated by Transneft, had become a prime target after Ukraine's successful strikes on refineries like Gerishi and Volgograd earlier in the year, which had already slashed Russian refining capacity by up to 20%. But Siberia's vast distances, over 3,000 kilometers from Ukrainian launch sites, posed an insurmountable challenge for standard drones. Enter the extended range variants, the UJ-26 Beaver ER, Ukraine's kamikaze workhorse, modified with extra fuel tanks and advanced navigation for one-way missions exceeding 2,500 kilometers, and the AQ-400 Scythe, cheap plywood decoys mass-produced for saturation attacks. Russian commanders in Irkutsk were confident. The region was blanketed by a multi-layered air defense network, including S-400 Triumph systems with their 91 N6 Big Bird radars capable of detecting targets at 600 kilometers, and Panzer C-1 batteries for close-range shredding with 30mm cannons and missiles. This was the anti-access area denial bubble NATO feared, honed over years of conflict. But Ukraine's plan wasn't brute force, it was a symphony of deception. To pull Russian defenses away from the critical pipeline segment near Lake Baikal, waves of 120 AQ-400 Scythe decoys were directed at dummy targets, remote villages like Jigalovo and Ust-Kut, and even the city of Irkutsk itself. Simultaneously, electronic warfare drones, dubbed Banshee-8, built on the Beaver chassis but loaded with jamming pods instead of warheads, escorted the main strike force, ready to blind Russian radars. At midnight Ukrainian time, over 200 drones lifted off from scattered sites in eastern Ukraine, hugging the terrain at low altitudes to evade early detection. Preloaded with digital maps, they navigated river valleys and forested ridges, slipping under the radar horizon. A few were lost to mechanical failures or crashes, acceptable losses in the high-stakes gamble. Crossing into Russian airspace changed everything. The swarm split. 120 decoys surged toward Irkutsk, triggering alarms across the network. The Big Bird radars prioritized the threat cluster, launching 48 N6 missiles that tore through the plywood fakes one by one. Russian operators cheered as targets vanished from screens, reporting sector clear up the chain. But this was the trap. Amid the chaos, the real assassination squad, 25 UJ-26 Beaver ER drones, each with a 40-kilogram warhead, skirted the edges, supported by 10 Banshee-8 jammers. A Panzer battery near Bratsk locked onto a Beaver with its RS-12E radar, telemetry streaming in. But a nearby Banshee detected the X-band signal and unleashed a torrent of interference, whiting out the operator's screen. The lock broke. Cannons fired blindly into the night as the drone vanished. This cat and mouse repeated across the taiga. Russians downed 150 drones that night, including all decoys aimed at Irkutsk, a victory broadcast by the Defense Ministry. But in the blind spot created by the frenzy, 15 beavers breached the final defenses, diving toward the pipeline's pumping station and valve manifolds. At 4:12 a.m., the station's local panzer reacted too late to the low, fast signals. Missiles claimed 3 drones mid-air, but the rest struck home. The first beaver, armed with a thermobaric warhead, slammed into the control building, creating a vacuum explosion that shattered walls and ignited fuel lines. Seconds later, others pierced pipelines and pumps, unleashing geysers of oil that erupted into massive fires. The inferno spread, melting valves and halting flow. 2 drones targeted a nearby storage tank, sparking a blaze that consumed 50,000 barrels of crude. The ESPO's daily throughput, around 1.6 million barrels, ground to a halt in this segment, cutting 500,000 barrels per day to Asia. Daily losses, an estimated $60 million, compounding Russia's already strained exports after earlier strikes on ports like Ust-Luga. Satellite images soon revealed the devastation. Black smoke plumes visible from space, emergency crews scrambling in sub-zero temperatures. Hours later, Russia's ministry announced downing 361 drones nationwide, claiming all attacks repelled. But the truth leaked via social media. The pipeline offline for weeks, forcing production cuts and rerouting via vulnerable rail. In Beijing, Chinese buyers scrambled as supplies dipped, highlighting Russia's growing isolation. The technical standpoint, Ukraine's operation exploited real vulnerabilities. The ESPO, while fortified, relies on remote segments hard to patrol in Siberia's harsh winters. Long-range drones with autonomous navigation bypassed curvature of Earth detection limits, giving S-400s mere seconds to react. Jamming overwhelmed decision-making, a tactic refined from prior refinery hits. Russian units, like the Eastern Military District's air defenses, were oriented towards external threats from the Pacific, not deep inland stripes. This oversight, combined with shift changes and weather delays, opened a fatal window. Ukraine's intelligence, likely from satellites and hacks, timed it perfectly. The strike wasn't just tactical, it was economic warfare. The ESPO feeds Russia's $400 billion gas deals via parallel lines like Power of Siberia, and disruptions ripple globally, spiking oil prices and starving Moscow's war coffers. This operation underscores a new era. Superpowers felled not by armies, but by swarms of ingenuity. Ukraine, with bold precision, has once again exposed Russia's Achilles heel, proving that in modern war, distance is no defense against determination. Thank you for watching.